4 weeks of no UFC starts now, and in today's episode of Fight News, we have some important news after UFC Tampa as well as updates about Jon Jones versus Aspinall, Poirier's last fight, and UFC Spain, etc. So, wasting no time, let's start the video. I'm the Indian accent guy, and you are on the Fight Book. In the post-event conference after UFC Tampa, Dana White says that Colby didn't seem upset that his fight was stopped because it was clear that the eye was bothering him. He says, love him or hate him, Colby is tough and durable, and Buckley was landing big shots to the body and head that would have knocked a lot of others out. White also talks about Buckley's call out to Kamaru Usman and says that a fight between Buckley and Usman wouldn't suck. In case you don't know, Usman is rumored to fight Jack Della Maddalena at UFC 312 in Sydney, and in that case, my personal pick would be rescheduling the fight between Joaquin Buckley and Ian Gary. Manel Kape called for a title shot after his win at UFC Tampa and promised to find Dana White if he doesn't get the conversation he was promised. White says that Kape isn't getting a title shot off of his performance against Bruno Silva, but that they will definitely give him what he's looking for. White didn't clear what that is. It could be a title eliminator fight, maybe against Moreno or Kai Kara France. Cub Swanson went 3-0 in Tampa at the co-main event last night, and he will go down as one of the best to never get a UFC title shot. White says that he is happy for Swanson if that was his last fight, but if he decides he has one more left in him, he wouldn't disagree with that. White says that when a fighter wins as spectacularly as Cub Swanson did, it is so hard for them to walk away. Swanson says in his post-fight press conference that at this point he is more excited to be a coach than a fighter. He says that he has always felt that he had more to do, but now he feels like he is happy with what he has done, so he would need an offer that motivates him, like a rematch with Doo Ho Choi, which was the fight of the year in 2016 and went down as UFC Hall of Fame Class 2022. His opponent Billy Quarantillo reacted to his loss via X and had nothing to say except that he got caught. Michael Johnson pitches for another match with Justin Gaethje after his performance of the night knockout win at UFC Tampa and believes he can get that loss back. He also received a call out from up-and-coming prospect Daniel Zellhuber for UFC Mexico City. There is no love lost between Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier, who exchanged more words after Johnson's picture-perfect KO at UFC Tampa. Chandler reminds Poirier of his loss to Johnson, while Poirier in response reminds him of his bad UFC record and a loss from him as well. Dana White talks about Poirier's retirement fight as well at the post-event conference and says that they are currently working on Poirier's final fight that he wants to close out his career with. Daniel Marcos, after a split decision win over Adrian Yanez, calls out Jose Aldo, and Davy Grant also calls for his dream matchup with Jose Aldo following his win over Roman Tavares. Now riding a 7-fight unbeaten streak in the UFC, Sean Woodson is confident after his KO win that he would be a bad matchup against small Ilia Topuria. Miranda Maverick, despite calling it her worst performance, wants to move on from Tracy Cortez to Jessica Andrade after Cortez pulled out of their previous matchups. And then Spanish fighter Joel Alvarez, who got the first round knockout and only lost to Arman Tsarukyan in his last 8 UFC fights, would love to welcome Cowboy Cerrone back to the UFC after Cerrone's wish to get back and complete 50 fights under the Zuffa banner. White says that Joel Alvarez had a great performance and hopefully we will see more great Spanish fighters in the UFC. He also mentioned that a performance like that makes him even more eager to go to Spain. White adds that whenever the UFC goes to a new market, it causes an explosion of interest and he looks forward to bringing that to Spain. White says currently there is no new news on the UFC going to Spain, but that's what they want to do in 2025. He says that if the UFC goes to Spain for the first time, that they want to go big with a pay-per-view and make it a big event. He was then asked to share his thoughts on who is the fighter of the year between Ilia Topuria and Alex Pereira. White says that it's tough to pick between Pereira and Topuria for fighter of the year. He lists the circumstances where Pereira was taking fights and won't make a pick but really respects what both have achieved. Giving an update about Jon Jones vs Tom Aspinall, Dana White said that Jon Jones vs Tom Aspinall is 100% happening and that would be the biggest fight in heavyweight history. White says that Jones says publicly that he doesn't want to face Aspinall but says something differently behind the scenes, and that's weird. White says that Jones isn't a guy who turns down fights and that he's not afraid to fight anybody. He also says he has something in the works for next year people aren't going to believe, and that 2025 is going to be bigger than 2024 in the UFC. Then finally, White gave an update on Nurmagomedov, the fighter who asked him for a shot at the UFC 308 press conference. White revealed Nurmagomedov lost his fight to a Brazilian prospect Matheus Camilo via unanimous decision at the Korean Zombies event, and that the Korean Zombie has made him aware of several issues during the fight week with Nurmagomedov, including almost pulling out of the fight if he wasn't allowed more cornermen. Dana White confirms he signed Camilo to the UFC after his win. And that's all what happened after UFC Tampa. We will talk about more updates in the next video, so stay tuned. Give your feedback and then do whatever you want.